Welcome to Talking Federal Business. I'm Nick Vlahovic, consultant to industry. Today, I'm going to share with you my best bet federal agency targets for FY23 and beyond. You're probably wondering, why should you pay attention to these now since it's 4 months into the year? I'm recording this at the end of April 2023. Well, the reason you want to pay attention is that these are targets because when they get funding, that funding tends to live on for many years to come. So it's an agency I've identified you may not have been aware of. And so since it has money now, it's one you want on your radar screen. That's why you want to be paying attention to it. Now, I'm going to make it easy for you because you'll be able to get to each agency during this video through the timestamp, so you don't have to listen to the entire video unless you want to. I'm also going to have links to each agency in the notes below, to each web page, and also to each agency's small business office, since that's the front door, so you can get additional information and get in touch with people to talk further about each agency. You can also reach out to me. My email address is here in my channel, Federal TV, and I can work with you on the agencies as well. I'm really good at new business development stuff. Before I get into the agencies, let me tell you how I identified them. I identified them by combing through the 4 main spending bills from last year. So let me start with those and refresh your memory on them. Here they are. They are the 2022 Consolidated Appropriations Act, a $1.5 trillion spending bill, signed into law by President Biden. There was the CHIPS and Science Act, a $280 billion spending bill meant to fund the resurrection of the semiconductor industry. Then you had the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, a $369 billion bill. It was actually a climate control act, but who's counting? And then lastly, there was the 2023 Consolidated Appropriations Act, signed into law by President Biden right at the end of the year. I think it was December 29th, a $1.7 trillion spending bill. Together and combined, $4.7 trillion in spending that is being kicked into gear this year and beyond. I don't think we'll see a year quite like that for quite some time. Now, what I did in each bill when I studied them, I looked for those agencies that had a large line item in construction funding. Construction funding is big because construction fuels the economy. But also, when you have a lot of construction as a line item in a federal agency's bill, that also means that agency will have a lot of other funding. It's called operations and maintenance funding, O&M, in order to fund the stuff that has to go into the building when the building's built, as well as buy services to managing the building. So it goes then that a agency with all that would be a great target for just about anything, whether you're involved in construction or the stuff goes in a new building or the services or anything. That's why these agencies are really good targets. Okay, so let's go through the list. The first agency you should target is called the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST for short. I know you've never heard of them, and neither had I until I started looking at the CHIPS and Science Act, because the Department of Commerce, who's running CHIPS and Science, has NIST as a child agency, and NIST is delegated with the job of managing everything having to do with CHIPS and Science. In 2022, they have $3 billion, NIST does, $3 billion for a brand new National Science Technology Center, and $10 billion for 20 regional technology hubs. I don't know what those things are, but they sure sound intriguing. So I'm going to be all over them with my clients. For FY23, they have $462 million appropriated for other additional construction funding. So all of that makes NIST a very important target for you for FY23 and beyond. The next agency you want to target is FEMA. That's right, the FEMA that goes by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. That's the FEMA that rose up from the ashes of the Katrina disaster. I've never forgotten that one. Many Americans have not. But now they're doing a fantastic job managing hurricane disasters and wildfires out west. I live in Washington State, so I can relate to those things. FEMA has facilities in all of the 50 states. They also have 10 regional offices around the country. And as disasters increase, and they are on the increase, unfortunately, their funding is going to increase. So that's why you want them to be on your target list. And they're constantly buying stuff on the quick as disasters happen. So they're a great, what I call, annuity account. For FY23, they have $50 million to upgrade the 50 facilities they have in the 50 states. So in other words, there's a FEMA project near you. You can get to FEMA through their 10 regional offices, through the links that are here in the notes below, or contact me. FEMA should definitely be on your list. The next agency you want to focus on is the National Guard. The National Guard is broken up into the Army Guard and Air Force Guard. And the National Guard has two missions: to report to the President through the Department of Defense, and they also report up to the governor of each state because they have a state mission. Disaster response, teaming with FEMA, for example. For 2023, the National Guard has $920 million of construction, which is a lot. And I can tell you that's not a one-time thing. The National Guard has been spending on construction, new construction, and renovations for years. And they have to, because the people who work in the National Guard, the soldiers and airmen and women, have to have the same equipment as the regular military does so that they can work together in a cohesive way. It makes sense, doesn't it? So, and they're a little behind, I happen to know, than the regular military, so they're playing catch up. So there's a lot of funding in the National Guard bases. So there is one in your state, so please focus on the National Guard within your state. Next, you want to focus on the U.S. Coast Guard. The U.S. Coast Guard is interesting because they're not just on the country's coasts. They're up and down our rivers and tributaries, and they're also around the world at all of our U.S. possessions. For example, Puerto Rico, Guam are two examples of where the U.S. Coast Guard is. So they have $350 million of construction funding for FY23, $35 million of which is targeted towards, get this, child development centers, which is a military term for daycare centers. And yeah, there's married couples in the Coast Guard, and it's a quality of life issue to fund daycare centers for the kiddos for married couples. And it makes sense that they would do that. And hats off to our military to be thinking about our married couples who are serving for us and protecting our borders. Next, you want to focus on the Department of Energy. The Department of Energy is one of the most complex agencies, departments within the federal government because of its science and research mission. And within the Department of Energy, you have the Office of Science, which has 17 laboratories around the country with names like the Fermi Laboratory, the Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. We happen to have one of the 17 up here in Washington State, where I'm from, that helped out on a small project, little known small project called the Manhattan Project way back when. They made some kind of material called plutonium. I don't know what that did, but anyway, that's what they did. And the Office of Science is funded with $800 million in FY22 funding. And for FY23, it was really, when I dug into their FY23 budget, I couldn't tell the difference between construction funding and research funding. It was all kind of intermingled. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I have one more agency to talk to you about. If you run out of things to do, which I don't think you will, but if you do and you want to know about Office of Science funding within your state, get a hold of me. And it'll be much easier for me to look at the broken down numbers in the Office of Science for your state, for construction that is, rather than me trying to come up with one number, because it was really hard to interpret with the numbers all kind of intermingled together for FY23 for the Office of Science. So do that and it'll be much easier. if you get to it. Okay, one more agency to talk about, and that is not the Department of Defense per se. You already know to call on the military bases, but I'm going to talk to you about two initiatives within the DoD. The first initiative is laboratory construction. For about 5 years now, the DoD services, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, they all have been building and renovating laboratories. In FY23, they have $400 million appropriated for laboratory construction and renovations. That's a lot of money. So if you supply laboratories, if you build laboratories, design them, outfit them with furniture, equipment, anything, you provide services for them, you want to be looking into these laboratory projects within these four services. And then last but not least, one initiative within the Navy I'll mention to you. It's called SIOP. It stands for Shore Infrastructure Optimization Program. SIOP is an initiative to upgrade, and they need them, upgrade the four main shipyards that the Navy uses to repair and retrofit its ships, its aircraft carriers, its submarines, its destroyers, and all its support ships. There are 3 shipyards in North America, one in Pearl Harbor. The 3 in North America are Portsmouth, Maine, Norfolk, Virginia, and Bremerton, Washington. So there's $20 billion planned to be spent over the next 20 years on the SIOP program. So you can expect that $20 billion to happen, and it's funding that will come above all the other Navy funding that will be happening where the Navy exists throughout North America and Hawaii and Guam and so forth. So SIOP will be a great target, as the Navy always is. So that's it. That's the list of the target agencies. They are great targets. If you want any help, my email address is here. You've also got the links below in the video notes. Have at it. Good federal selling. This is Nick Vlahovic, consultant to industry. Thanks for joining on Talking Federal Business. We'll see you next time.